Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, welcome. My name is Faith. Thank you so much for being here. Today I am making another video about breastfeeding. I did a video called 10 Successful Tips for Breastfeeding about, I want to say 2 months ago. I'm not totally sure. Time has kind of flown since having my baby girl. I have a baby girl named Summer. She is just over 3 months old, and she's actually sitting, well, not sitting, she can't sit yet, but she's right down here. So if you hear like kicking and thumb sucking or just different noises, that's what that is. I will show you guys Summer at the end of the video, but I really want to get into this topic because it is something that I think is very important to talk about, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure. First of all, just to breastfeed in general, there's just a lot of pressure to make it work these days. Breastfeeding is amazing. It is truly the best nutrients that you can give your baby. But if you can't breastfeed, it's okay, because you're still going to be able to feed your baby. And I think that that's, first of all, very important to say. If you can't breastfeed, like for whatever reason, it's okay. But if you can, that is awesome. But even if you can, there's still like different ways to go about it, specifically breastfeeding on demand or breastfeeding on a schedule. And these days, just from research I've done and just being out in the world as a new mom with other moms who are breastfeeding, it seems like the, I don't want to say trend, I don't even want to say fad, but just the correct way to breastfeed is on demand, or at least that's the vibe I've gotten, is that if you're going to breastfeed, you should be breastfeeding on demand. So I'm going to talk about my story, my experience with breastfeeding on demand, and also breastfeeding on a schedule, because I've actually done both. And I want to give you a sense of how both of those worked for me and my experience. Bless you, Summer. Yeah, I just want to give you my experience from doing it both ways. And again, little disclaimer, this is my experience with this. Your pediatrician might suggest something specific for your baby. So definitely don't just change up your baby's routine or schedule or anything solely based on what I'm about to say. Make sure you check with your doctor and everything like that. But let's get into the video. I'm going to talk about breastfeeding on demand versus breastfeeding on a schedule. So as mentioned in the introduction, I have done breastfeeding both ways. So let's just start from the beginning, right from when we brought Summer home from the hospital. So I had it in my mind that I was going to breastfeed on demand. Summer, this is important to note as well, because another reason to breastfeed on demand is if your baby needs to gain back their birth weight. Summer never lost weight. Like, she never dropped. She only went up. So that was awesome. But I had it in my mind that I was going to breastfeed on demand because that's what I had heard about the most. That's what I had just thought was what I should do. So I was breastfeeding on demand, and I think in that first 3 weeks or so, breastfeeding on demand really worked super, super well. It was obvious that she was hungry. She would give me the hunger cues, and I knew that she wanted to eat, so I would breastfeed her. She also was still in that very early newborn stage where after she would eat, she would fall right back asleep. So she was sleeping fine. You know, at night, it just is what babies are. They don't sleep a ton. So she would cluster feed a lot, but she was sleeping. She was taking naps, and so we were breastfeeding on demand. I did find out that she had a milk and soy protein intolerance at about 5 weeks of age. I could just tell something was wrong. She was physically in pain, like just screaming all the time, especially when she needed to poop. So side note, that's just kind of like a side note, I had to change my diet in order to continue breastfeeding her, and everything got better with that. But what I started to notice is as she got a little bit older, like around the 6-week mark, maybe even before that, honestly, she just would not sleep. She was done with like falling asleep at the breast. She just wouldn't do it. So when she would cry, I would nurse her, and then she'd be fine for a little bit, but then she'd cry again. And so I'd nurse her thinking that she was still hungry, doing this like breastfeeding on demand. So I was constantly nursing her. And again, this is around like the 5-6 week mark. I was nursing her probably, I am not exaggerating, I was nursing her probably 20 times a day because I just didn't know why she was crying. She just constantly was crying, seemed hungry. I would feed her. You know, she was in the 75th percentile for weight gain when we went to our 6-week appointment or something like that. So, I mean, technically in terms of like weight gain, breastfeeding on demand was going well, but in terms of our life at home, it was miserable because she was just constantly nursing. And it's one thing to maybe nurse 12 times a day, which is a lot, but is still like somewhat normal. Like 12 times a day, that can be normal for a newborn. I was nursing her, no joke, probably 20 times a day because what would happen was, as I said, she would nurse, she'd be okay for like 20-30 minutes, and then she'd start screaming, crying again. And I thought that it meant I should nurse her again because, again, there's there's just this thing around breastfeeding and how good it is, and that you have to like just sacrifice and do it for your baby and do it on demand whenever they want it. And I think something that's maybe that can be mistaken in looking at that is what the baby's other needs are. Because at least for me, and I have to think I'm not the only one that went about it this way and ended up having issues with breastfeeding on demand. I just assumed every time she cried, it was because she wanted to nurse. And it's very hard to distinguish hunger cry from tired cry. And this is the pivotal moment which changed everything for us, everything including breastfeeding. I had a sleep consultant reach out to me on Instagram and wanted to work with me just to help with Summer's sleep. Her name is Hines. I will put her information below in the description bar. This was the pivotal moment that changed everything. Up until this point, like I had said, I was nursing Summer like 20 times a day, and her sleeping had gone out the window because she no longer was falling asleep at the breast. And I'm not kidding you, we would get up in the morning. I was actually co-sleeping with her because I couldn't put her down because she would scream and cry. We'd get up in the morning, and from 8 a.m. until 7 or 8 p.m., I was lucky if she slept for 20 minutes. And that's terrible. Like, it's no wonder she was crying so much. It's because she was exhausted. And I think with the breastfeeding on demand in my head, I just assumed that I just had to breastfeed all the time. And so that's why I'm making this video, is if you're struggling with breastfeeding on demand, it might be that your baby isn't actually hungry, your baby is tired, or there's something else going on. Like for me, it was not only that she was tired, but it was that she had this milk and soy protein intolerance, which I had to fix with my diet. So we started the sleep consultant training, and basically what this created without even, I guess, deciding to switch to a breastfeeding schedule is it just naturally created a breastfeeding schedule. Because we had a sleep schedule, it was like I would feed her right after each nap and right before bedtime, and it almost created this breastfeeding schedule. I'm gonna get upset. Okay, little baby boo. Here's Miss Summer. Here's Miss Summer. It almost just created a schedule. And when I say schedule, I don't mean that like she's only allowed to eat 5-6 times a day and it's at these exact times. It's not like that. It's more just like there's a pattern of the day. She wakes up, I feed her right after she wakes up. She goes down for a nap, depending on what her wake time is, because wake times will change as babies get older. I'll keep her awake and play with her for a little bit and then put her down for a nap. And as soon as she wakes up from her nap, she eats. So it does vary day by day. It's not like she eats at 7 a.m. and then she's not allowed to eat again until 10. You know what I mean? It just goes by the day. But she is so much happier, and looking back, most of the times that she was crying and upset, it probably wasn't even because she was hungry. It was just because she was tired. So I'm just going to give you a little rundown of like what our day looks like right now. So I'm just going to sit her in my lap. She woke up at 6:40 this morning. Normally she wakes up at 7. It was a little bit early this morning, but that's okay. So she woke up, I fed her. Now we are hanging out and playing for about another hour or a little bit longer. She'll go down for a nap. That nap can last anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. And then when she wakes up, I feed her. And then we do it all over again until bedtime. And her bedtime is 7 o'clock. That can shift like a little bit here and there. But this has created kind of like a breastfeeding schedule, and it is life-changing. She is so happy. Last time we went into the doctor, she was still following her growth chart. She was in the 50th percentile for growth. So I am not really worried at all that she's not getting enough. At first, it was kind of crazy to me because, like I had said, I was breastfeeding her maybe 20 times a day, and now I was going to be breastfeeding her like 7 times a day, 8 times a day. And now that she's almost 4 months old, it's like 5 or 6 times a day because she gets so much more in each feeding session. So to kind of wrap up my experience, what I would say is in the first 2 to 3 weeks, even up to a month, breastfeeding on demand is definitely, I think, an important thing to do because you really want to like plump them up and make sure that they are getting enough. And normally in that first month, it's very easy to get them to fall asleep. If your baby after that month mark is struggling to go to sleep, or you're just noticing that they're overall fussy and your first inclination is to feed them and you end up just feeding around the clock, there might be another solution for you, believe it or not. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with sleep. Yes, eating is obviously very important. You need to eat to stay alive. The baby needs to eat. But what is also super important for their development is sleep. And so breastfeeding on a schedule and putting emphasis and a very important focus on naps and nighttime sleep is super, super, super important. So I hope that this gives you an idea of what breastfeeding on demand was like for me versus breastfeeding on a schedule. 2 very, very different ways to go about it. But I just wanted to put out there that there are other ways to breastfeed than breastfeeding on demand, because I do feel like there is a lot of pressure to be one of those moms that like breastfeeds on demand. You just are always there to breastfeed. And I don't know, maybe I'm gonna get slack for this, but I know from my experience, Summer is a happier baby on a schedule. 100%. She will fuss a little bit each day, but she used to cry all the time when I was breastfeeding on demand. She was miserable. And now that we're on a schedule, she knows what to expect. She is just so much happier. There are other ways to do it. I just wanted to share my experience with anyone who plans to breastfeed or is breastfeeding right now and is struggling with it. There are other ways to do it than breastfeeding on demand. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Here's little sum-sums, little sum-sums. And definitely subscribe to my channel if this video was helpful and you want to see more videos. Let me know if there's any other breastfeeding related videos that you'd like to see from me. I know this video wasn't super long, but I just wanted to share quickly my experience. Leave me comments down below with any questions you have, or reach out to me on Instagram through direct message. I always answer. So if you have questions, let me know. I love you guys all so, so much. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye!